Made in China. Von der Werkbank der Welt zum größten Konsumentenmarkt und Technologieführer. Eine Reise durch das Leben, Business und die Kultur im Reich der Mitte mit Damian Maib und Thomas Derksen.
A very warm welcome to our Made in China podcast. Today we have another English episode and we are very happy that we are sitting in Damian's office in Shanghai with a view of the Oriental Pearl Tower. Very nice office, Damian. I'm not getting tired to tell you that. Very happy to be here. And our guest today is Jacob Johansen. Jacob or Jacob.
Yeah, both is correct.
Yeah, you're from Denmark. I guess like the right would be Jacob, right? Or
yeah, in Denmark I'm Jacob, here I'm Jacob.
Jacob, okay.
Or if you want to go totally local I'm Jacobo.
Jacobo.
Yeah.
Jacobo. Yeah, great.
I respond to all of it. Fine.
You respond to all of it. Great to have you here. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
So, as always, we start with 3 quick questions. We didn't send you in advance. It's just a little icebreaker, and let's see how it goes.
Perfect, yeah. Our honor to have you here, Jacob. A very warm welcome also from my side. And the first question is, if you would have one superpower, which one would it be?
Whoa. I think it would be along human capabilities. I'm very personally interested in empathy as a leadership tool, for instance. And I think those softer tools in how we interact as human beings are also extremely interesting in business. So I don't know if that's a superpower, but I would consider it a superpower. So along the lines of stronger empathy, stronger ability to not just, academically understand how people think and what they need, but actually almost feel it on your own body. I think there's a lot of questions in business and life in general that would be answered much, much easier if we had that ability. So that would probably be my superpower.
Yeah, cool. It's a very cool superpower. And the next question is also a little bit connected to this. You said you have decades of experience in this area, and there are some days where everything goes wrong. On these days, what keeps you going? What is your motivation on these days?
If it's really bad, 1 word, 2 words, Japanese sake. That's more repair than keep going. I think I have been a competitive athlete in Europe before I moved to China. And I think everybody who do sport on that level hate to lose. And that competitiveness has sometimes helped me. China has not always been easy. I've been here a very long time and it was rough when I came. And that ability to never accept defeat, I think, is what keeps you going during hard moments.
Very nice. So, first of all, what was that sports you were doing? And second, how do you define a good friendship?
Oh, the sport, I've been competitive cyclist. And what was the other question? A good friend?
Yes, how do you define a good friendship?
Oh, a good friendship is about sharing for me. It's the ability to speak candid, to criticize each other, to really correct each other. Everybody needs correction. But it's hard for all of us to take it in, open-minded. But if you have established a friendship, you in some cases, if it's very strong, you also establish a room for taking things totally straight to your face. And I think that's some of the most helpful moments in my life is when I have those moments with friends. So I think for me that's the most important quality. The second, I would say, laughing together. There's nothing more healing than laughter.
That's very right. And you have an interesting story, so let's dive in. We are very happy today that you are willing to share your expertise with us, from a professional cyclist to coming to China, and now you are an author, you are a speaker, you are also an expert on user-centricity, which is very important in China. Could you tell us a bit about your journey from Denmark to China?
Yeah, before going to China, I moved to China in 2002. And before moving, I had a career in brand strategy and advertising. And when I came out here, I came on my own initiative. So I'm not sent here on some expat contract with a 3-year deal and an office ready for me. I honestly booked a hotel, took a flight, and landed in Pudong Airport with 2 suitcases and an address for that hotel, and that was it. And from there, I literally just walked up and down Nanjing Lu, tried to find certain offices where I could go in and knock the door. And I tried in advertising, but I ended up in a retail company called Simply Life. I don't think it exists anymore, but they had retail in Xinjiang and a couple of other places, Dongpinglu and places like that, selling like home accessories, interior design, objects, stuff like this. After that, I started my own agency. I sold it. I moved into corporate advertising for a few years. I've been GM and CEO for some both big global American advertising agencies. I've been running a British independent agency. But slowly I started shifting both passion and interest, but also my work changed, because in those days a lot of new Western business, new to China, opened here, and I ended up having these conversations with CEO, not about branding necessarily or consumer insights, but just as much about business strategy. And there was not so many advisors. Now you can feed pigs with advisors, but back then there were not so many. So I started unconscious, subconscious slide towards a classic advisory role, and I would say that shift consolidated itself 10 years ago, and since I have been in pure advisory roles, and I do a lot what I call business concept transformation. So a company is standing over here. I'm now pointing to my left. We know that position is bad. I want to go over here. I'm now pointing to my right. What's that journey, but also especially what's that endpoint? We know what we don't want to be. We know we're under pressure. What does the new, if it's in retail concept, if you're in manufacturing, I work with a couple of German manufacturers, for instance, what does that business concept look like? So that's what I do. It has a lot of similarities with my time in branding, in the sense that I still consider it to some extent creative work, or at least it's very outside-in driven. It's all about understanding other people outside the company to make sure that the new concept you evolve is relevant for other people and not just for the internal needs in the organization.
A very interesting journey, and you just mentioned it's all very much outside-in driven. That brings me to a very good topic, which is the book that you have written, From Customer to User. Yeah. What is the book about, and what were your thoughts behind it?
Yeah, I had a work contract as an independent consultant before PwC, where I worked with IKEA, primarily in China, but also Japan, Australia, South Korea, Middle East, and later globally. And I was asked as an external independent to support the process transforming IKEA from classic brick and mortar retailer to what in China we call new retail, but what in Europe would be called omnichannel, right? Super interesting, and one of my observations were that the biggest barrier for making deep transformations, or really, in the lack of a better word, disruptive transformations, is a very strong inside-out perspective. And that's not just IKEA. I mentioned IKEA because I spent so much. I love IKEA. Let me say that as a disclaimer. I have had some of the best working moments there, and I still have personal friends there. So I'm not knocking on IKEA. I just say it become obvious to me that the biggest barrier for actually do real transformation is internal ways of working, habits, and especially a corporate perspective that always starts from looking at political ambitions, revenue goals, infrastructure, and whatever is very important, of course, and totally valid criteria, but also completely irrelevant to the world outside the business. So that's what inspired me to write my book. As you said, I call it From Customer to User, and it's fundamental about two things. It's about, as the title indicates, expanding your view in business from only looking at customers to embrace a bigger audience. We can get back to what that is, but a bigger audience I call users. And the other shift is from running and evolving your business from a very strong inside-out perspective to applying an outside-in perspective. I know it's a long answer. Let me just very shortly say, this may sound for everybody listening like complete logic. Nobody ever told me it's better to have an inside-out perspective. But the fact is that even we all agree that outside-in is a healthy approach to the world. It's really, really difficult to apply it in your own business, and especially maintain it when you start to get into daily operations.
Can you define it once more? Like, what is outside in your perspective? What does it mean?
It means that when you, in my line of work, for instance, working with transformation, the briefing I get almost every time is about corporate ambition or corporate objectives. So it's about revenue optimization, cutting people, expanding, getting a bigger market. There can be many reasons. All these reasons are inside out. This is something that your board wants, on your CEO wants, or a management team wants. There's nobody out on the street saying, I really hope that, now I'm just saying 7-Eleven could expand rapidly and extremely hard and fast in China. That's an internal corporate ambition. And I say, maybe that's cool, but I think I have a formula, if you like, which is very simple, that companies who understand to fulfill a need become relevant to a group of people who have that need. If you are relevant to a group of people, you can convert relevance to business. That's very simple, 3 steps, as everybody should agree. But most companies work the other way. They look at their business first and what they want to achieve. Then they try to, through marketing or other tools, to squeeze it upon consumers to make them feel this is relevant for me. And then they hope it will also fulfill some needs. But actually, most companies don't care, right? I think I call it the natural flow of business. And I think the natural flow of business should always start with understanding a need, then creating solutions that makes you relevant. That's an outside-in perspective. It means you always start outside your business, looking at your challenges. So maybe for 7-Eleven, I have nothing to do with 7-Eleven, but so just as a disclaimer, as a random example. But if you're 7-Eleven, maybe the answer is to expand fast and substantially all over China. But what is the problem? What is the need that you fulfill? But I see most businesses actually starting with a solution. And then they end up struggling because they're not fulfilling any needs, so they're not relevant. So long answer again, but in all simplicity, it's about we are in the need fulfillment business. You are not in retail, you are not in consumer goods, you are not in manufacturing, you're not in automotive, you are in the need fulfillment business. And I sometimes ask CEOs, what need does your company fulfill? And half of the time I ask, they can't answer me straight away, which is quite telling, in my opinion.
Just to be clear, we are very happy about your long answers because other companies or people have to pay a lot of money to get the long answers from you. So right. Don't feel ashamed to take our time.
I'll send you a bill later.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
No.
So you just said it's like a natural process. It's very logical that you need this outside-in perspective. But on the other hand, you said a lot of companies, they do the total opposite. So what is the reason behind this, that oftentimes it starts with a need and then in the end it's just about fulfilling our corporate needs or our board members' needs?
It's a good question. It's very interesting. I have observed this in businesses because if you look at almost any of the companies I have worked with, at least, and the companies that we normally like Halo brands, all of these companies have started from an outside-in perspective. All of these have started with some kind of entrepreneur or Steve Jobs or whatever have you, who see a need in the market and they have some kind of idea how to fulfill that need. It's very hard to find businesses which are not created. There are brands which are created the other way, but most corporate entities are actually created based on an identified need, a gap in the market, whatever you call it, and then you create a fulfillment and build a business and expand from that. But almost in every of these cases, we see a conversion in as the company grows. The larger it becomes, the more and more significant all the internal challenges become. And I don't think the tipping point is necessarily the same in all companies, but nonetheless, there seems to be a tipping point in all these growth processes where one day you wake up and the amount or the burden of the internal challenges overshadow those external insights and those user needs that you are originally there to fulfill. And that also happened for Apple. Now I mentioned Steve Jobs. It happens for, it's natural, I think. It happens for all the companies I have worked for. And you don't see it because one day takes the other, and it's not something that happened one day to each other, but it accumulates. It accumulates, so people start to care more about person politics. As older a company becomes, you also grow habits and bad habits, but the world don't wait for your habits. So the world keep changing, but your habits are quite often stalled. So that gap between what the market needs and what you offer and how you work, that just grows bigger and bigger. And that is why it's important to remind companies, or maybe try to sometimes go back to their roots and in terms of thinking. not in terms of the product or the service, because the world has probably moved on since most companies were founded. But again, very basic truth. Always start from what's the need, because your need is the need you address is your right to play as a company.
Yeah, and you, despite outside-in perspectives, you mention concepts like the adult baby.
Yeah,
that's particularly interesting. You describe how mobile devices have shaped a new mindset. Could you elaborate on that? What is the adult baby concept about?
Yeah, let me explain. The reason why I describe adult baby is that I find everybody I meet in my work as an advisor working with transformation, everybody I meet wants to transform their business. Otherwise, why would they call me? So I only meet clients who are very change ready. But I find that a lot of them are not aware why they need to change. And in my past work, I have come to a conclusion that there are many reasons why companies have to change, but there's exactly one thing that almost all cases have in common, and that is that the personality of people have changed. And I call that personality change the adult baby. Adult baby is not a segment or one consumer group. It's a part of everybody's personality. Let me try to explain. When a normal baby cries 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm gifted with 2 daughters. They are teenagers, but I remember when they cry in the night, you give them milk. 3 o'clock in the morning, you have to get out of the bed. You have to go there, give them the milk, burp them, whatever you have to do. You cannot negotiate. You cannot rationally argue that could you wait until 7 o'clock when I'm up anyway. You just have to do it, and you don't think about it. It's just the way it is. I think we have a new mindset within all of us. We don't want to wait for anything any longer, and we want everything to be customized to our individual egoistic needs. That is the very short explanation of the adult baby. And the reason why I linked it to mobile devices is that I try to... So it's because of this adult baby, it's because of this mindset change that companies need to change. Because companies are not used to give people what they want when they want. They are used to do business where it makes sense for the company. So you choose a location or a distribution system which is good for you. And you tell people, I'm open from that to that because it makes sense for me. Then consumers have to comply to that, right? I think that we have to turn that around, and because adult baby will not start screaming. So we have to accommodate the needs of adult baby, whatever we want it or not. The mobile device triggered this mindset change in people because within that little box we all have in our pocket, when that first became something we all carry, that changed our mindset, because for the first time in history, we could get everything we wanted right now, tailored to our personal needs. If we took all the mobile devices in the world, put them on the floor, turned them on, I don't think 2 phones would be configured exactly the same. We have our same choice of apps, and even if we have exactly the same apps, we would lay out them different on different screens and use them differently. This is the first time that people have the total freedom to do things on their terms and when they want and how they want to do it. And I think that has inspired that new mindset that today companies has to comply with. Before, big businesses used to tell people, this is how you do if you want to do business with me. Remember in Europe how we used to stand in line in the bank and wait for our turn to get the bank book they printed in it, and it was and you had to be very humble and very polite when you walk. Some Chinese banks are still like that, but this has all changed, and this is because we don't accept, as consumers, we don't accept to comply to the convenience of companies any longer.
Yeah, a very good example for me, as I used to work in the bank before in Germany, and people came to me very hard with the Sparbuch, the savings books to get money or to put money in. Yeah. Very interesting. And also, you like to talk, and the title of your book is From Customer to User. So I think we also need a definition for this, because a quote of your book is, all customers are users, but not all users are customers. So could you explain the difference between users and customers?
This is the essence of the book, I would say. And for me, this is extremely important for almost all businesses to start thinking this way. Let me give you the definition of my definition in my book, what I call a user and a customer. A customer for me is a person who is engaged in a purchasing transaction with a company. So it means you're going to a shop or online, you find the product you want, you pay for it, you receive it, done deal. By nature, if you think about it, that's a very short-lived relationship. I know some companies call everybody who is in contact with their business customers, but I don't think that's a correct definition of the word. In my book and in my terminology, a customer is a very short-lived process, it's transaction-based, and that's it. I'm not a customer before I start buying, and after I buy, I'm an ex-customer, but I'm not a customer. It's done. A user, on the other hand, is a person who interacts with a company and its sphere of interest. It will take too much time today to fully discuss what's a sphere of interest, but just to make it very short, it means what a company is interested in, the company's industry in general. I used IKEA as an example before. IKEA's sphere of interest is also life at home, for instance, not just furniture, but also how do people live at home? How do they enjoy themselves at home? How do people, the kids, have a happy childhood at home? This is way beyond products. This is how we live around what IKEA does, and now I use IKEA as an example, but there are many other examples. And in China, there are very good examples of companies who understand that and actually reach for that sphere of interest, but we can maybe get back to that. That means, if you think about it, a person who interacts with a company and its sphere of interest, it means all customers interact with a company and its sphere of interest because they interact with the company through the purchasing process. But there's a lot of people who don't buy anything, but still touch upon your sphere of interest, who is interested in life at home, who is interested in the culture, different generations in one home, life-work balance, which is also touching of the home. I'm just freestyling, but it's a huge topic. That means they share that passion or that interest with a company. The interesting thing is that there are many reasons why it makes sense to expand your worldview. I want to make sure that people understand that shifting focus from customer to user doesn't mean that you don't care about your customer. Of course, you want to cater and pamper your customers and thank them for their business and make sure they come back and buy more. But if you really want to grow your business, it's sometimes more interesting to look at people who maybe share your interest and your passion and your values, but choose not to shop with you. And you can only learn about those if you understand their needs and reach out to them. The second reason here is that all these people who share your sphere of interest also have an opinion, and they are strong influencers, especially now with social media, but also just in conversations between people. They shape your business as much as your customers does. So I think I say that companies should expand their worldview because it opens up a huge amount of opportunities for future innovation, product development, new services, if you look beyond your customers. But I also think you have to, because these users who don't buy from you also influence your reputation. It's not just people who buy your products that influence your reputation or your opportunities. So why not reach out, connect with them? And Adult Baby want to be treated like a customer, even if she has no intention to buy from you. Mm-hmm. So that's how Adult Baby fit into this. I accept in my advisory and in my business work that there are an enormous group of people, bigger than the customer group, who want and expect to be treated like a customer, even though they have no VIP card and maybe even don't like your company. You have to cater to them, or they will influence your general reputation.
When you were talking about users, I was immediately thinking of the Chinese automotive brand, the automobile. They do it, right? They do
NIO does it.
Yeah, they have like the NIO houses, then they have experiences, events with the customers, they have merchandise, they send you stuff, they have like this online community even, I think. So that's what they do much better than German car companies, right?
I think cars are an interesting example. I'm very aware of the NIO case. They also use the term users, but it's independent from my book. So we have developed this way of thinking simultaneously in two different directions. And NIO is not 100% case example of what I'm talking about, but it has a lot of the attributes of what I talk about. I think what's interesting in that case is that they understand that you have a life around your products. Let me give you another example, which is not NIO, but back to IKEA, maybe kitchens. When I buy a kitchen, it takes me 6 to 7 weeks from I decide to buy the kitchen until it's installed, my old kitchen removed, and I start using the kitchen. So for 6 weeks, I'm a customer between me and the kitchen company. But that's a window of relevance between me and the kitchen company. When I'm no longer buying a kitchen, everything that kitchen company tell me is uninteresting and irrelevant to me, because I'm not going to buy any kitchens the next 15 years. But I use my kitchen every day, and my wife uses the kitchen every day, and my kids use the kitchen every day, and we also have an IE who use the kitchen every day. So here we have in my family 5 people. Let's say we use the kitchen a half an hour each of us every day. Maybe that's over-exaggerated, but at least let's say the family, we use the kitchen 2 hours every day, not just for 6 months, for every day, 365 days a year for 15 years. I have many needs when I use that kitchen, but these needs are not purchasing related. They are related to my usage of the kitchen, to my cooking, to my storage, to my whatever I do in that kitchen. But companies who only look at customers will keep telling me, here's a new door made of wood, or a nicer handle, or a free installation in May. It doesn't bother me. It's not interesting to me. It's totally irrelevant. So if they expanded their view from only my customer needs to my user needs, that's why I talk about opportunities. There's so many other things that you can fulfill, and it doesn't have to be only products. It can be, now I'm just freestyling again, but it can be recipes, it can be cooking tips, it can be online delivery or direct delivery to your door of whatever you need. It can be grocery. The list is long if you look at my user needs instead of just my customer needs as a kitchen client. NIO is interesting because they have the same point of view on the car. They say, yes, there's a purchasing transaction. So 30% of NIO's square meters in NIO houses are a classic shop, I would say, with a couple of car models, some color sampling, blah, blah, blah. That's what transaction. That's classic shop. If you go upstairs, 2/3 at least of the square meters are allocated to coffee shops, meeting rooms, conference activities, child play, all kinds of other activities. Those addressing user needs. They look at their users and say, what does this person need while they interact with my product? That's parking, that's waiting, that's a lot of other things. So they provide those services along the line of the product offering. And that is a good example of user centricity. I wouldn't say they do it 100% the way I would do, but they do it 80 or 70% of what I advocate. And I think this is interesting because this is how you create relationships, long-lasting relationship with your end users. And NIO, you can discuss their business case and other components of that, but they do have some of their most loyal customers in China, actually. People love that brand if they have a NIO car. I don't, just for the sake of clarity. But those who own NIO cars are very passionate about it.
Yeah, very nice example. Well, I do have a NIO car, actually. I like it.
Yeah, see.
Yeah, very good. Also, the battery is being taken out, a new one is being taken, and I'm sure there's a couple of friends in Germany, and they're always amazed. Yeah. But talking about user centricity, when I think about that, in my mind, American companies would probably be the strongest leading power, which is always thinking much more about the user. At least from a German perspective, right? That's kind of my feeling without having studied it a lot. Chinese companies, well, since the opening now 30 years ago, we see Chinese companies are getting stronger and stronger. You named NIO. There's a ton of others like Huawei, and so on and so forth. If you would dare to differentiate by country, generally speaking, what's the biggest differences of how these companies implement user centricities and who's doing it best, like Chinese?
No, but there's no question China does it best. That's actually, I think China is maybe even the only market who really do this, which I find to be very sad. I will be a little reluctant to give grades, out of 10 for US or Europe. I lived in China since 2002, and I've only been to Europe 6 times in that time span. So I don't want to be judged, but I have worked with many European companies. So my judgment would be based on my conversations with the European leadership. I find most Chinese companies to be very open towards this way of thinking. This is also due to the fact that we don't have all those long-grown bad habits in corporate world, because corporate world in China is 30 years old. So everything is fresh and new, and it's okay to do things differently. But when I talk to Westerners, I find another mentality. I will sound like I'm stereotyping now. Bear with me. But when I do speeches in Europe or US or online, for instance, and I talk about these topics, it's very, very different how the audience reacts. When I do it in China, there's a forest of hands asking questions after, and they're all like, how could I apply this? What would this mean for my business? What if we did this? What if we did that? So interested in the conversation. So almost progressive, like how can we do something interesting based on what you say? If I do the same speech in Denmark, I will also have some questions, but they will not be questions, they will be confrontation. People will stand up and say, I disagree with what you just said, blah, 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 blah. And that's fair. I always answer it. That's fair enough. It's not a religion. It's just a book. I'm not a preacher or anything. If you see it differently, you do your thing. Fine for me. But it's just obviously a very interesting observation, because why do we... It makes us slow if we always start from a reluctant point of view. If we always start to say, no, I have another opinion, and have to argue about it. Why don't we just explore things together? You go home, do your thing, I go on and do my thing. But it's just an interesting observation. And I think this is something which is unique to China, that it's maybe because of the young environment that there's just a bigger curiosity. A footnote here is also, when you meet young Chinese, they always say, I just want to learn. If I meet people in Europe who are young in their career, they say, I want to advance in my career. It's a different approach, right? But there's a hunger here to learn, and that's curiosity is always great in life, right? But in Europe, I see companies they have locked in their processes and their operation models. They have refined them for 100 years. It's very, very difficult for them to accept that they have to change. You mentioned automotive, but everything related to manufacturing, go to them and say your processes need an update, or you need to refresh your perspective. You just get... People don't like to change. It's human nature. We like repetition because it makes us feel safe, and it probably goes back to the caveman, right? We prefer that we know what will happen tomorrow. And because Europe been successful so many years and US for 100 something, we don't have appetite for radical ideas. And this is one of the reasons why Chinese companies are very successful, and Europe needs to wake up a little bit. That we could learn something. There are many things we cannot learn from the Chinese, and we shouldn't learn, because there are also many bad habits here. But we can learn the curiosity from the Chinese and turn that inwards and look at ourselves and say we need to maybe rethink our own companies quite dramatically.
Okay, let's do an argument together. Yeah. So you had a speech. I'm your Danish audience, and in your speech you just said long-term strategies are comical, and in China also, but all over the world, long-year plans are very common, right? And very accepted. China, the 5-year plans, they love it. I think you're wrong.
Okay, so. Maybe I am. Maybe in some cases I am. But it's true in my book I write that all 5-year strategies are comical. What I mean by that, first of all, I'm not an oracle or something. So in some cases maybe it makes sense. But I just speak from my personal point of view. By the way, I also write that in the foreword to the book. This is my personal manifesto. So there can be people who have another case or another example. Cool. But what I experience is that I'm called in often to, not so much in my current job, but before joining PwC, to work with companies. I did this in the Middle East, for instance, doing 5-year strategies. And the interesting thing is that, yes, you can do that, but fact is that you can be precise about year 1, a little bit precise on year 2, but when you're out planning year 5, you're just shooting in the dark. And that's why 5-year strategies are never implemented. Maybe politically in China, but now we talk corporate strategy, not political strategy. So I will not touch about political 5-year plans. But in business, I don't see these long-term plans being implemented. I see them being implemented up front, and then they vaporize, and all these PPTs with strategy material, they die a slow death in somebody's drawer and are never looked upon again. So I think that idea, I understand we're back to repetition and feeling secure. We want to do so I understand why people ask for it. They ask for it because you feel good. If I sit here, I'm CEO of your company, and we together agree on a 5-year strategy, we all feel good. We done great work. We had the discussions. We feel safe. We are prepared. But let me say one thing. January 2020. I remember very, very clear example. I was standing in my window looking at Shanghai Tower, January 2020, and I was pissed sick, coughing. Everything came out of everywhere. I had COVID, but I didn't know that because nobody had ever mentioned that at the time. I had plans though. I have loads of plans. I knew exactly, maybe not 5 years, but I knew exactly what I would do the next 3 years. I even had the whole year booked in my calendar with projects and clients, and all that disappeared a week later when COVID became a topic for the world. And this is a great example of why 5-year strategies doesn't work. Actually, I'm writing a new book now, which will be done in 6 months, I hope. It will be called Do You Think Tomorrow Will Be Like Yesterday? I don't think so. I think if we look at recent history, talk Ukraine, talk geopolitics, talk American election, talk, there are so many unforeseen changes that completely change the trajectory of the world. And I think it's almost stupidity to sit and agree in a board of directors that we can make a plan 5 years into the future, because if we are rational, we know that nobody can guess that. So I'm much more in favor. I'm not against thinking long term, but I'm much more in favor of making. In my book, I call it moonshot. I think that's not my term, but a general term about big ambitions. And I mentioned Kennedy and the speech about 10 years from now, put a man on the moon. We do it because it's hard, not because it's easy. I like that vision because this is a vision about achieving great things. He didn't say we do it by having 3 committees and a meeting every Wednesday. He didn't say that in that famous speech. He said the ambition, and he made people excited about reaching that goal. And I think businesses can learn from this approach. I know it may sound a little bit pop smart and easy, but I really do think that a lot of companies should rather focus on the destination instead of the route to the destination. But what most of my old clients at least asked me for was the route, not the goal. They wanted to know what to do every day the next 5 years so we can reach that goal, but I cannot draw that map. So that's why I say 5-year plans are stupid.
Yeah. No, thank you for the answer. Very good, right? And besides in a Chinese 5-year plan setting, it mostly is not so plannable in business.
Yeah.
So last but not least, of course, China is very fast-paced, rapidly evolving and changing. And I'm mostly in e-commerce. I see that happening with Douyin, right? With TikTok, coming a lot of market share from social commerce, and some companies.
Douyin is the second largest e-commerce platform in China, I was told.
Amazing. Well, yeah. In terms of what we see at the moment is that JD is quite constant with around a 20% market share, and then you've got Taobao, Tmall. If you count both of them together, you have around a 40% market share. 20 go to Tmall, 20 to Taobao. And then you've got Douyin coming with around 13% now overall. Okay. But you do have categories, many categories like cosmetics, personal care, where Douyin in some segments in the mass market has more than 50% market share. Yeah, more than half the market. It's crazy. And it all came from 0 to 100 basically in 4 years, right? So we see a lot of companies, some of them complaining their business is not going well. Oh, why? Yeah, because they are maybe too slow to adapt, and maybe they haven't hit this route. Yeah, so there's always these players. But what about these companies who are too slow to innovate or too rigid or have this corporate inertia whatsoever? What would be your advice? What steps should they take to innovate and to keep their business model relevant, especially in China these days?
But they should start to change their perspective, like what we talked about in the beginning, from inside out to outside in. Because most of those companies who struggle on these different, all those digital platforms, they are on these platforms because they want to sell more. But if you ask those people, what is it you bring here, what needs do you fulfill here, which the Chinese brands does not fulfill better and quicker, then I think you'll be hard squeezed to come up with an answer. And this is a problem, that we have a lot of Western companies who just want to play, but they have not thought about the deeper questions about, do I bring anything which is not here right now? I'm more expensive, I'm slower. And if I don't bring something which is not already there, then you are really naive if you think that you can sell. And so that would be my first advice, to change your perspective. 2, you have to honor and fear the competition. During COVID, during lockdown, all the Western companies, they put China on ice, they sort of wait and see. In that, because Western companies have other markets, so we focused on other markets. And now we come back and find that changed China, because the Chinese companies did not have anywhere else to go. So they have evolved tremendously since 2020 to a level where a lot of the CEOs I work with, they say, frankly honest, Jacob, the Chinese products are at the same level or even better, and they are half the price or lower, and they're much, much quicker than we are. And also German companies telling me this. And obviously, if that's your scenario, you need to take a really deep breath, and you have two choices. Either you close down the shop and say, I cannot compete here. I think that'll be very unwise. I think it's very, very important to have a presence here. Otherwise the competition shows up on your home doorstep very, very soon. So, but some people, it might be right for some companies who cannot lift this burden of work to say, okay, that was it. We go to our, EU or something we're more familiar with. So that's one choice. The other choice you have is to really fundamentally rethink your business. And I like to simplify things. Most of my honored consultancy colleagues will like to have fancy words. I don't think it's so difficult and fancy. I think it's just about relevance. You need to think about what you bring to the Chinese market, which is relevant. Your origin, you're made in Germany, made in Denmark, not relevant. It used to be. 2002, when I arrived, if I tell people something about Denmark, people went ballistic and thought everything was fantastic. It's not like that anymore. You are competing on equal terms. And one of the problems, if I'll round it off here, but one of the problems, I have a lot of clients who, or at least past clients who felt, I need to do all this fancy strategy and organizational change, where some of them are just asked, have you looked at your products? Maybe your products are not right. If you look at automotive, if you look at a couple of other industries, there's a lot of Western products which are not up to average standard of the Chinese market. So maybe it's not a strategy problem. Maybe it's not your organization. Maybe you just need to really take a deep look at your product and change it. And if you're not willing to adapt your products to China, the days of playing here are over. So I think this is a need to do, not a nice to do.
Jacob, thank you so much for this advice. We're waiting for your bill later. You have our billing address. This was very helpful.
On the house.
And I think also for our listeners, it was very valuable insights and they can take a lot. Thank you so much once again. And we were very happy to have you here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jacob.